Hey y'all, here OS Reviews. In this video we're taking a unboxing and first impressions look at the Bigme B751C, the C standing for color. This is one of the most affordable current generation color e-readers slash note-taking devices. It supports a pressure-sensitive stylus pen, similar to the Kindle Scribe as well as the Remarkable 2. You can use it for jotting down things. But what sets it apart is for a sub $300 retail price, it has a color e-ink screen. So you're able to also access different highlighting functions when you're note-taking, as well as if displaying images when reading back comics, for example. It might be of interest to you. Of course, black and white text can still be shown, and similar to regular e-ink, it consumes very little power, especially when it's sitting on a static image, although there is also a backlight that you can turn on if you're reading in darker environments. At 7 inches, though, it's going to be a lot more compact than the aforementioned Kindle Scribe and Remarkable. And by the way, Bigme does also have a regular B571 without the C that just has a regular monochrome black and white e-ink panel that allows you to save even more. All the other elements, though, including the design, as well as the hardware inside, the stylus support, will be identical on both the black and white and color versions of this product. Otherwise, the technical screen resolution is 1264 by 1680 with a 300 ppi, should be quite sharp for the black and white pixels, and then the color part has a res of 632 by 840 with 150 ppi, so it's not going to be quite as dense or sharp, and colors will still be a little bit muted in comparison to a regular LCD, for example, but it's kind of the best that e-ink technology, or e-paper I should say, is capable of doing at this time. There's also supposedly a higher refresh rate mode that you can trigger. Technically, this is running on a version of Android, so you are able to leverage APKs as well as sideload other reading apps, for example, that you might be interested in. It even comes included with the regular Google Play Store out of the box. I believe 4 GB of RAM is on here by default. It comes included with the case and the pen as part of that price range, and it's powered by an Octa-Core 2.3 GHz MediaTek processor, 64 GB of built-in storage that can be augmented via a MicroSD card slot. Technically, it is powered by a 2,300 mAh capacity battery, but again, because of the fairly energy-efficient nature of e-paper screens, it should last you for well over a week or two before you have to really recharge it again, depending on how often you're using it. And it's based on a version of Android 11, although it doesn't matter too much, I suppose, on a device like this, which is still designed primarily for reading and note-taking. The UI has been otherwise customized by Bigme to optimize the experience. So the packaging looks something like this, very clean, and comes in actually 2 compartments. So up top here we have a section with the actual e-reader, and then down below here is going to be the case. So if we lift up the smaller box here first, and further down below here we also get the included stylus pen. So again, all of this is bundled in, and the stylus here that Bigme is using is actually crafted out of a solid chunk of aluminum alloy, so it feels surprisingly cold and solid, quite hefty as well, so it does feel very premium compared to, say, plastic that we usually see in this price range. It has a slight texture onto the side, so it doesn't roll around, flattened there. Now, one difference, though, compared to, say, a Wacom EMR stylus pen that is found on the aforementioned Remarkable and also Kindle alternatives, is that this one here is still requiring a battery, which is going to be a quadruple A cell to be powered. Still supports pressure sensitivity and palm rejection in addition to capacitive touch. There's also going to be just a standard USB Type-C charging and sync cable, as well as a quick user guide, as well as a smaller box that contains a pen for removing the microSD card tray, and you also get a puller that can be used to replace the stylus nibs, the plastic here, once they wear out, and there are 2 replacement nibs included in the box. And then in the thinner compartment is where we'll find the aforementioned included sleeve to protect the e-reader when you're on the go. It's a pretty thoughtful extra that usually you have to spend a little extra on for products from Kindle as well as Remarkable. That kind of adds up in terms of cost. So great that you get all of this bundled in by default. It's a kind of synthetic leather texture, including a holder on the side there for the pen, and otherwise you just pop in the e-reader like so. It's basic, but definitely does the job. It actually looks quite clean with the Bigme logo there on the front. Now, I'll also point out that the quadruple A battery inside of the stylus is rated to last around 6 months to 1 year, depending on how often you're using it. So it's not like you have to replace it too often, but after that's up, you can then find replacements pretty cheaply on Amazon, for example. Usually a pack of 2 or 3 just sells for a couple of dollars, so it's not too bad, but of course a rechargeable battery, or better yet, having no need for charging would have been even more preferred, but it is what it is, a slight compromise to hit a lower price point. Now here we have the actual e-reader itself, and first impressions being that it is indeed super compact. That's not too surprising considering the 7-inch screen size of this particular model, and removing the protective wrap, you can tell that it has pretty slim bezels as well, especially on the right side and the top and bottom edges, which just contributes to the overall very compact frame. Just as a reference, we have a pretty standard size 6.5-inch phone, and you can tell that it's not going to be significantly larger than that. So this will slide really easily into a backpack when you're on the go. Here's also a standard 6-inch basic Kindle from Amazon that actually stacks up to be not that much larger, since this thing has much bigger bezels by contrast. And also with the aforementioned Kindle Scribe, that is a 10.5-inch device, you can tell how it is going to be significantly smaller if you are traveling or on the go. Now, a closer look at the hardware. We do have a kind of glass finish on the front, which is slightly textured, and the side here makes it a little easier to hold with manual page up and down keys for turning the book, which I actually do really like. It's a touch that both the Remarkable as well as the Kindle Scribe don't have, so you have to rely on only the touchscreen as your primary way of flipping pages. This gives you a second option that I think is a little bit more tactile and responsive. A power key on the very top that we'll just hit on for a few seconds as we initialize the initial boot, and the frame of the Eink tablet here is otherwise constructed out of still, I think, polycarbonate plastic, so it's relatively light, but overall it still feels solid enough, and there are some chamfered edges that includes a built-in loudspeaker as well. There's the Type-C port on the left-hand edge here for charging with an LED indication light, and then on the very bottom here, just the microSD card slot for expanding the memory, nothing else on the right-hand side, and then at the very top just has that power key. On the back is just a kind of matte textured plastic that you can use to snap into the included folio case. So quite simple, and we can proceed into the setup just by choosing the language that we prefer, and otherwise it's again capacitive touchscreen, some terms and conditions. We can tap on agree. We can also set up the Bigme AI note, so it's their handwriting application. It can also convert your notes into text, and you can send it over to email more quickly. So we can click to initialize, and this also takes us into a quick tutorial of how to navigate along the app by going from the center up to go back home, very similar to stock Android tablets these days. Here's a guide that tells us a little bit more about that pressure-sensitive included pen. So it looks like we can calibrate the sensitivity of the pen by placing it gently over the screen for a couple of seconds by pressing on the 2 keys simultaneously, and you can also wake up the pen just by tapping on any of the buttons there once. It also tells us to then connect to Wi-Fi and the internet. And if we select on, say, a network here, you'll see a virtual keyboard there pop up down below, so it seems to be working all right. Again, the guts of this thing, the Octa-Core processor and 4 GB of RAM should be plentiful. Once that is completed, we are now into the main home screen UI. It tells us to kind of click on the top left-hand corner to go back home every single time, and otherwise we are able to access in this carousel view our meeting notes that we've jotted down. On the top right-hand corner, we can also gauge the battery percentage, the Wi-Fi internet strength, as well as the current time and date settings, and we can also click on here to adjust the screen properties. Just like other ePaper and e-ink devices we've seen in the past, it actually performs really similar to regular printed ink on paper, similar to a novel. So if you have plenty of light hitting on it, including out in direct sunlight, it's still going to be completely visible compared to LCD screens and OLED screens as well, which have a backlight and tends to just completely wash out if you are using it in really bright environments. This is actually super similar to paper, very impressive in that sense, great for reading, less strain on your eyes as well, but you can also trigger a faint glow light if you really are reading at night, for example. Super legible, and it tells us that we can also adjust properties like the color, whether we want that to be turned on or off, as well as the refresh frequency can be manually selected down below as well. Down below here, we can also access our library. This is going to be all of the different PDFs, as well as EPUBs, Word documents, so on and so forth, that you have on the device's memory or microSD card. And similarly, on the bottom tile here for App Center, find the full list of applications available on this e-reader, including basic utility tools that are quite typical of applications found on the device, including certain, it looks like, cloud backup services like Dropbox and Google Drive. Even OneDrive can be used as alternatives again. Tap on it again to disappear, and there's even a translator app built on in, a web browser, a calendar, basic dictionary, as well as the regular Kindle app is on here as well. Again, one of the benefits of running on an Android-based OS, it's fully open sourced, and you are able to also view back any local media files as well as documents. And there is even, interestingly, a AI assistant. So I guess this is their attempt to have a similar kind of chat GPT-like app built on in by default. So if you ever wanted to ask certain queries, so you can tell it to, you can also ask it to do tasks such as coding, teaching you something, explain something, again, leveraging a large language model. Let's actually try this out. So I've asked it to create a 3-day plan for visiting Las Vegas. It looks like the voice-to-text transcription maybe has a few small punctuation mishaps here and there, but again, it's not really the advertised strength of this. It's much more about written handwriting and the display here, of course, but it's still actually quite responsive, and it was able to generate this 3-day plan of all the highlights in this area for me and response quickly. You'll also find the Google Play Store for downloading additional content, and also this navigation ball that you can hide or disable if you don't want it, but you have this to access quick shortcuts for things like screenshot, as well as flipping the orientation of the screen around. And tapping on the icon here will pull down a notification tray, again similar to on Android phones and tablets, where you're able to capture a screenshot, even mirrorcast it onto a wireless screen, screen record, power managing, go into an ultra power saving mode, and more importantly trigger into some profiles, including daytime that completely turns off the backlight, or you can turn into a night mode that will actually turn on the backlight. Of course, it is going to be a little harder to see here since it is so bright, but the backlight does have customizable colors as well, making it warmer versus colder depending on your preferences. And the carousel can further be slided here to access other utility functions, including reading back PPTs, PowerPoints, Excel, as well as Word documents. Here's also a separate, it looks like, tab for some quick shortcuts, including the voice translation, and also a memo pad that you can use to create a checklist of things to do. So those are all the commonly used functions there on the carousel. Let's actually go into Notes and just try creating a sample just to see how it performs. The ability to choose different types of pen options, including the size of the pen, of course, the type of brush we want to use, a pencil versus calligraphy, ballpoint or highlight, and again, taking advantage of this color screen, you're able to choose different palettes and shades to draw in. So let's go with blue, for example, and we can say, just as a test here, hello world. So it does indeed have pressure sensitivity, and you can tell that the pen strokes will get a little bit harder if you are pressing harder versus lighter. You'll see that difference there accordingly. So actually really not bad, very little latency in fact, for a non-Wacom EMR pen that is. Here's also a kind of, and ending this on a quick look at the case, which does have magnets that will automatically lock it closed and turn off the display as well once you close up the folio, and then wake up again when you lift it up. So the auto wake functionality seems to kind of work as expected, doing a pretty decent job there. So that is more or less it as far as our unboxing and first impressions look at the Bigme Pocketbook 2